Hello, it's my pleasure to share an example of the type of innovation that's reshaping the cannabis industry and redefining the consumer experience. We all know how quickly innovation can change our world and our way of thinking. It wasn't that long ago that we had slow, painful access to the internet from a dial-up modem. But today we expect to have wireless broadband from virtually anywhere, including airplanes at 40,000 feet. So why should cannabis be any different from other markets? Shouldn't it evolve quickly as well? Can we envision a future where cannabis products taste good, are good for you, and actually have a fast-acting and predictable effect? Is it possible to take the guesswork out of dosage and onset, two issues continuing to plague the edibles industry? And what do the next generation of edibles look like? Today, we'll get into greater detail on this topic with Azuca, a company I've watched evolve over the last several years and one that continues to push the boundaries of innovation. It's my pleasure to introduce Azuca's CEO and President, Kim Rayal, and Ron Silver, Founder and Chief Creative Officer.
Glad to be here and super excited to talk to you about innovation in cannabis ingestibles and really where we see the market going for the best cannabis edibles.
Ron.
Hey, thank you so much for doing all this stuff and for having me. My name is Ron Silver. I am the Chief Creative of Azuca and founder, along with Kim, and really with you, Carlos. And thanks a lot for doing this. I'm excited to talk about this subject.
Great. Well, my pleasure, Kim and Ron. So Azuca is known for its innovative technology, and you guys have coined something called time infusion. Can you explain what time infusion is a little further, Kim?
Yeah, so I think the best way to really bring this concept home is I'm actually going to ask everybody to just close your eyes for a second. Everybody listening out there in Zoom land, just close your eyes for a second and listen. Your eyes are open, Carlos. All right. Okay. Stop. I'll end the torture. All right. So what was that?
Dial up.
It's like a chalkboard.
Horrible, right? So yeah, you guys, I mean, those of you who are as old as me, and even who are as old as my son, who played his first video games on dial-up internet, that is dial-up internet. And we like using the story about, what really happened to the internet in its early years is it was bad, it was unreliable, it was slow, it was clunky, it was painful, it was like a chalkboard, like the horrible sound. And broadband comes along and really opens up the internet for everybody, right? It's fast, it's reliable, and creates a whole new user experience. And that new user experience is what Azuca is doing for the cannabis ingestible or edible category. So think of traditional edibles, which take 45 minutes to 90 minutes to kick in. They're unpredictable, slow to take effect. That's sort of like dial-up internet. And I think that those traditional edibles are dead, just like dial-up internet is dead. In the next 2 to 3 years, the ingestible category is going to grow probably faster than the overall cannabis market which is a great market to be in. But as it grows, in fast-acting ingestibles will take over the market. And in the next 2 to 3 years, traditional edibles, I think, will be less than 2 to 3% of the market. And broadband edibles or fast-acting edibles, like the ones that are enabled by our time infusion technology, will absolutely dominate the market. So that's where we're going.
Hey, Ron, can you give us a little bit more about the science?
Sure. So, really, as you know, Carlos, I've been trying to figure out this problem with cannabis edibles or the problems with cannabis edibles for 7 or 8 years, really. And in the initial time, there really wasn't good oil around. So the problems that I was dealing with then were also bad oil and sort of crude, unrefined, and very powerful tasting oil and unpleasant. So, you know, essentially the number one problem that has always existed in the cannabis edibles space is a controllable dosed edible. And, you know, there are other problems, like for manufacturers, for example, where there's a lot of waste during manufacturing, and there's waste because things aren't shelf stable. So really over all this time, I've been trying to figure out, and we have been trying to figure out how to solve these problems. And it really comes down to something as small as a molecule, which is 1.5 nanometers, and how to deal with something that small. And it has really been a process to try to understand what that means. So essentially, I don't know, do you want me to talk about thermodynamic individual molecular encapsulation?
I'd love for you to talk about what you just said.
So we have a system. So a lot of edibles in the marketplace today are either just raw oil or something going into the edibles, and that is very unstable and takes a long time to kick in. And your body can't absorb very much, which is called bioavailability. And so once you get past just adding oil, cannabis extraction to edibles, there's something that people use called nanolipid emulsification. And a nanolipid emulsification is basically like a very refined salad dressing. But as everybody knows, with salad dressing, when you shake it up and put it down, it starts to separate. And with a nanolipid emulsification, the same thing happens, just more slowly. But it's not stable, and it wants to come apart. And the other thing about a nanolipid emulsification is that through its process, it makes a particle that's very small, and the size of that is anywhere from, say, 200 to 1,000 nanometers. But it has a lot of variabilities, and it changes over time. And the idea is to make something that's stable on the shelf and sort of has a quicker effect when it's consumed. But that's sort of not exactly what happens. And so we have the way that we approach it is not an emulsification. It's a thermodynamic process that encapsulates one molecule at a time, and that is really the only way that it works. So there's no variability in the encapsulated size. So that's 1.5 nanometers, and that's essentially how we've approached it, if that makes sense.
So
It does.
I'll jump in for a second, if I can. I just sort of make it visual for everybody. So, Ron was describing the encapsulation, and if you want to get a visual of it, like think of this tennis ball as a single cannabinoid molecule. It could be THC or CBD, 1.5 nanometers. What our thermodynamic encapsulation process does is it encapsulates that single molecule in a coating, in a little jacket. And that jacket is hydrophilic or water seeking. So because our bodies are over 60% water, and because this is a very small molecule or very small particle, when you ingest it, it's absorbed by the body very efficiently and very quickly. So that's why Ron's invention works so well in the human body. And he was talking about the other, I'm a very visual thinker. So he was talking about, other nanoemulsification or nanolipid processes being a much larger particle size. And just to give you a sense of contrast for that, like think of this as a particle size in a competitive technology, 20 to 30 to 40 to several hundred times the size of ours. And this little bitty guy, you can barely see, this is our little tiny encapsulated Azuca cannabinoid molecule. Again, when your body absorbs it, it's very happy. It reaches your endocannabinoid receptors very quickly, and our customers and patients are very happy with it. Sure. So our mission is really to enable every cannabis brand in the ingestible category to have the best products that they can have. So we license this technology to our to partners, and you can think of it as the Intel Inside model. I mean, I came out of the tech background. I spent 7 years at Intel, actually. So think of time infusion or this process as the Intel Inside your brand, whatever your brand is in the ingestible category. We do have a lovely case study in the market now. We partnered with Wana Brands, which is the #1 edibles brand in the country. And they've launched 3 SKUs of a line called Wana Quick. I am a very visual person, powered by Azuca time infusion inside. So we do have a line of Azuca branded products, but really our core mission is to license this technology to help every cannabis partner make their products the best they can be. %. Yeah, so most of my background, actually all of my background is in sort of tech and finance. I call myself a recovering venture capitalist because I was investing in startup technology companies as a VC for many years. And a few years ago, I decided that I love startups, wanted to stay involved in startups, but wanted to pivot out of tech and into the wellness sector, which is an evolving passion of mine. And a crazy friend of mine from business school who's moderating this panel tried to talk me into looking at cannabis. And I said, no, I don't know anything about cannabis. Anyway, fast forward, Carlos is the guilty party for introducing Ron and I about 3 or 4 years ago. And so I really fell backwards into cannabis out of my passion for wellness, and did a lot of study of the plant and the power of the plant to help people, to make people's lives better. And I'm all in, and to partner with Ron, who is really an expert in the plant, and has been inspiring and creative about how we make it more available and more helpful to more people. It's been a great journey so far, and we're only just beginning.
Well, prior to Azuca, I have been running my own restaurant in New York City, Bubby's, since 1990, which is actually Thanksgiving of 1990, which is Thanksgiving's coming up. It's our 30th anniversary. And I am, so I've had 2 big passions in my life, at least. Cannabis being one of them, and cooking being the other. And I've really been at them both for a long time. And I would say that my experience as a chef has very much directed my approach to cannabis. And my understanding of cannabis has certainly directed my approach to cooking 100%. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, no, I think I would put it that your products are good even without cannabis, and cannabis only makes them better, as far as I can tell. Ron, I know the origin story. I love origin stories. I think they are very important for the trajectory of a company, and also to understand kind of what makes a company tick. Could you talk about your identification of the problem and what problem you really went out to solve initially, kind of the origin story of Azuca, if you will?
Sure. So, I was in Las Vegas, and I was visiting with friends and who were started to become involved with cannabis, as you know, because I met you early on in my own cannabis adventure, and we've both been at it a long time. In a couple of early discussions, there was a pretty unanimous opinion that the number one problem in cannabis, period, not just in edibles, was the onset time and controllability of cannabis edibles, and the ability to deliver a low dose controllable edible was the thing that was considered to be the number one problem, and that seemed like something that I could approach. I did not understand how difficult it was going to be to figure that out. And in all fairness, each step of the way has been an improvement over what existed from before, and each problem came about because of a solution from other stuff. So over time, it very much has been a constant path, but I could see early on that was going to be a problem.
Ron, I maybe if you could even personalize a little bit more. I know some of the things that you shared with me that drew me into your story had a lot to do with the notion of making cannabis and the benefits accessible to people who would otherwise not try it. I mean, the story of doing this for somebody's grandmother. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Well, for one thing, I really have been weirdly committed to cannabis for my entire life. And a lot of that has been, existing in a sort of illegal world, with consequences, not necessarily for people who look like me, but for other people. But with consequences nonetheless, and a sort of impact on the way that people view cannabis. And as cannabis started coming out into the daylight and emerging as a real, something that wasn't going to be just smirked at or mocked, I could really understand that there were a lot of different benefits to it. And my restaurant is called Bubby's, and I really love little old ladies a lot. I have a huge amount of gratitude for them, and I also have ulterior motives with them in that I steal recipes from them all the time.
Thank you for clarifying.
And I really sort of make no bones about it. I'm like a literal second and third story man when it comes to stealing recipes. So I owe a sort of social debt to old ladies. And so really one of the great blessings about learning how to deliver a controllable dose cannabis experience is really working with older women and helping them understand how it's going to be a benefit to them and to what they're doing, because there really are a lot of problems that the sort of modern medical philosophy deals with in an untoward way that causes a lot of damage. And I think that cannabis is a lot more sort of human and flexible and multiple applications for multiple kinds of problems with multiple dosing choices. And so sort of developing ways to deliver that in a way that is both understandable, fun, and not smoking, so healthy. I don't know. All of these things have been directed by that. How to get little old ladies high, basically.
So,
Kim, given Ron's altruism around how he started and evolved the technology, how have you translated that into a value proposition into the marketplace?
well, I think that there are a number of ways we've done that. So for consumers, obviously, we try to make, or we do make cannabis very easy to understand, very approachable. So just to Ron's last point, an 80-year-old woman who would benefit from cannabis but finds it very intimidating can use, this is a simple sugar stick pack, 25 milligrams, you open it, you pour it in your coffee or your tea. This is a product that my mother can use, that, I have an old friend who's in her 80s who loves these form factors because they make something that up until now is often mysterious and scary, very approachable. Everybody knows how to put a teaspoon of sugar in their coffee or tea. And then it could be half a teaspoon or a quarter teaspoon, depending on someone's individual preferences and doses. So to the consumer, that's how we benefit them. To our partners, as I said earlier, we really try to help them make their brands the best they can be. We basically solve that last mile of dealing with distillate, which is what is the cannabis inside almost all edibles today. So distillate, if you're not familiar with it, is basically like tree sap. And it's very hard to measure. It's very hard to get into a cookie or a chocolate or anything in a homogeneous, easy way. And our process not only makes those cannabinoids fast acting, but for those manufacturers, we basically deal with the sticky tar part of the process and take it away, and help them eliminate waste and time in the manufacturing process.
Ron, I'm coming back to your culinary experience. Can you elaborate perhaps on how your experience as a chef has helped you not only evolve the technology, but create products?
First of all, if you look at the array of products that are cannabis edibles today, the vast majority of cannabis edibles today are gummy bears, and after gummy bears, you have a lot of things that are sort of developed by different kinds of people. A lot of them are food manufacturing kinds of people, and a lot of them are various levels of food science approach, I would say. So as a chef, I have really spent my entire career sort of reverse engineering things like Oreos, because that's kind of that's my style of cooking. So I really have tried to reverse engineer everything from, Twinkies, Coca-Cola, really crazy things. And so because of that, speaking of Coca-Cola, one of the big things that I am into, I was raised in Utah. Our number one sport there is drinking soda pop, really. And so I love soda pop, and we have a lot of cool syrups that we do at Bubby's for sodas that, sort of make everything from scratch. And so I would say that my overall curiosity over the last 40 years of being a chef and really trying to understand how things are made and backtrack them and sort of make them in the restaurant, so it's sort of the appearance of trashy while still being good and fun. I mean, this is sort of my whole thing. And I would say that approach is different from a food science approach. And, that would include everything from how to get flavoring, or what form factor to use, or how to make things that are more interesting for people to consume so that they can mix and match them and still understand what the dose is. And, all the things that can go into cannabis edibles once people understand them enough to branch out from the very understandable gummy bear.
So, Ron, just elaborate a little bit, because I think you almost take it for granted, given the reverse engineering and the process control and the recipes. At the bottom line, there's also a taste and a quality of ingredient component that seems to be very important to you. And I know that Azuca's technologies opened up product types, savories, for an example, that historically have not been made for various reasons. Could you just touch on the importance of taste and ingredients, and then also the spectrum of products that's possible today with Azuca technology?
Well, so that's a very large question. We try to approach things with three things in mind. One of them is the delivery mechanism or the form factor. The other one is the binding system. People use emulsification, or people, we're using time infusion to hold the oil in place. And flavor profile is the other thing that we really focus on. And we feel that all of those things work hand in hand to deliver something that's a quality product that people will enjoy and understand the experience each time. Does that answer that?
Yeah, thanks. So Kim, turning back to the business side, given your background in technology, can you talk about what it's like to take this from startup to revenue? And then, a lot of people are comparing tech and cannabis. Is that a fair comparison?
So I think in some ways it's a fair comparison. I think, for example, the boom and bust cycles, the internet boom and bust. I mean, cannabis certainly went through that in the last 18 months. And I really, from a capital markets perspective, I feel like we're at the beginning of like the third wave of cannabis investing, where companies with solid business models and smart plans for how to use their capital are going to really emerge as the strongest players in the industry. While there are some legacy companies who have lost hundreds of millions of dollars of investor capital, and that's tragic, much like the dot-com bust was. So I think that sort of cyclical analogy in the capital markets certainly fits. I think in terms of the actual business, I would say I've been involved in dozens of startups over the years on the tech side, and it is absolutely 100% clear to me that this is the hardest startup I've ever done. And the reason it is the hardest is because of the complexity of the regulatory overlay. So, obviously we're on a state-to-state basis on both hemp, CBD, and THC products right now. So we work very hard on compliance from state to state. But even the simple things, as I think most people in the industry know, like banking relationships, insurance relationships, having a payroll company, those things that we take for granted in a quote normal startup, it often takes 3 or 4 times as long and at least twice as much money for those same basic services in this sector. So the combination of those complexities and the costs of them in this business, and just the nascency of this industry, make it very complex. So equally rewarding. I would encourage anybody who has a steel gut to jump in. But this is not I think some of the mistakes that have been made in the sector, and we're seeing that play out in some of the, a lot of the, dead bodies or dead companies, in the alley are, I don't mean human bodies, to be clear. I just mean, is because people thought it was a get rich quick industry, and it's not. This is a business that's hard. It's complicated. It's complicated at cultivation. It's complicated in processing. It's complicated in manufacturing. It's complicated in retail. There are a lot of companies that are vertically integrated trying to do all of those pieces. I think that's really hard. We're focused on one piece. We want to do one thing really, really well, which is make ingestibles the best they can be. But this is a challenging industry.
Great. So given that degree of difficulty, I'd like you each to answer the last question that I have for you and really personalize it. So from your heart of hearts, I really want to know to each of you, and I'll start with you, Ron, and then turn to you, Kim. I want to know what impact you hope to have in the cannabis industry with Azuca, and secondly, why is that important?
I first of all feel so not lucky, beyond lucky to be in the cannabis industry. So for me, I don't understand how difficult it is, because I would do it anyway. And the thing that I really love about it is the impact that we're already obviously having on just the few people that we're working with, and the ability to really understand it and apply some things that are really interesting. And I would say that I feel that we are going to have, I know it sounds insane to say, but a really big impact on how cannabis edibles are delivered. And right now we just have our first phase of quote unquote technology, and our second phase really will allow us to deliver something even more special, I think, as far as all of these distillate edibles go. And then I think our third phase is going to be really impactful, which we have come up with, or we're developing a way to deliver a full entourage edible with all the cannabinoids and flavonoids and terpenes. So I think that we are on a track to help edibles manufacturers, to help growers, to help edibles consumers all be able to get the most out of cannabis, and to make it an easier business to be in, and also to make it a more understandable, consumable, whether it's for recreation or medicine. And so I think that that's the impact we really will be able to have on an international basis.
Kim, same question. What impact do you hope to have, and why is that important?
So I would echo everything Ron said. And what I would add is that for me, on a personal level, the one issue that really gets me out of bed in the morning is the opportunity to potentially have an impact on the opioid crisis. There's really wonderful research and work being done on cannabis as an alternative to opioid. And my family has been impacted by the opioid crisis. I suspect there's not a single person watching or listening who, within 1 or 2 degrees of separation, hasn't had an impact. And I think it's a tragedy. And I'm very excited about the emerging research on cannabis as both a step down and a treatment for opioid addiction.
Great. I'll just add, I look forward to the day, and it's already happened to some degree, that people reach out and say, hey, I've taken a Azuca product and I had a great effect. It helped me sleep. It helped me relax. And I think that's particularly important to open up those possibilities for folks to use cannabis in a way to help them out. So I want to thank you guys for the answers and the information you shared. I want to encourage everyone to head to your website. It's azuca.co, azuca.co, and reach out to Ron and Kim and the team there, and hopefully you learn a lot about Azuca. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.